The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Regency Hotel cast thousands of rainbow reflections across the ballroom. The New Year's Gala for Skyline Infrastructure was being held with unprecedented grandeur this year, featuring a full live orchestra. Caviar sat in silver bowls and champagne flowed like a river. Maya stood by a marble pillar draped in fresh evergreen garlands, watching her husband Marcus at the center of the room. He was holding court, telling another one of his signature jokes. A crowd had gathered around him, laughing loudly, patting his shoulder and refilling his glass with expensive cognac. 5 years ago, that was exactly what she had fallen in love with, his ability to be the center of the universe. To her, a 25-year-old orphan who had just graduated from architecture school, it had felt like magic. Beside Marcus, she had felt protected and needed, like she was part of something grand. He had entered her life so unexpectedly, a handsome, confident man in a bespoke suit who walked into the tiny design boutique where she worked to commission the interior for his new executive office. Now she was 30, and she had long since realized that beside him, she wasn't part of a whole. She was a shadow, convenient, silent, and invisible. At every event, she stood to the side while her husband shone. She was never introduced by her own name, only as my wife. Maya, why aren't you dancing? The wife of the chief engineer asked, approaching her. I'm just waiting for an invitation, Maya replied with a tight smile. Oh please. Marcus is going to outdance everyone tonight. He's so full of life. You're a lucky woman. Maya simply nodded. She had heard it 100 times. Here, among her husband's colleagues, she was merely Marcus' wife. In her own small design studio, people knew her differently. They valued her intuition and her unconventional solutions. But her husband always dismissed her career as playing with fabrics. Attention everyone. The MC's voice boomed over the speakers. Our chief financial officer, Marcus Thorne, would like to propose a toast. The room erupted in applause. Marcus climbed onto the stage and took the microphone. He was tall and imposing, his dark skin glowing under the stage lights, wearing an impeccably tailored suit. Friends, it has been a challenging year, but we've triumphed, Marcus began. I want to raise a glass to the thing that makes us strongest, to love. An appreciative murmur rippled through the hall. And right now, I want to invite the woman I love more than anyone in this world to join me for a dance. Every head turned toward Maya. She felt a flush of heat rise to her cheeks. Marcus rarely made public romantic gestures. Maya set her glass down on a passing tray and took a step forward. At that exact moment, Marcus stepped down from the stage and walked in the opposite direction. Time seemed to slow down. Maya watched as her husband approached the table where the administrative staff sat. She saw him extend his hand to a young woman with long shimmering hair wearing a silver sequin dress. Chloe, 25 years old. She had been with the company for 6 months. Chloe, you are the crown jewel of this office. Marcus said loud enough for the front tables to hear. May I? The room exploded with applause. Someone shouted. That's the spirit. Maya stood in the middle of the ballroom, her hand slightly raised for a man who never looked back. A few people glanced at her and immediately averted their eyes. A woman in a designer gown brushed past her, whispering, It's just a joke, honey. Get a grip. Maya slowly lowered her hand. Something inside her chest simply snapped. She watched her husband twirl Chloe around the floor, his hand resting on the small of her back, too low, too lingering for a casual dance. May I have this dance, Maya Bella Rose? She startled. Standing beside her was a man in his late 60s. He had silver hair, a neatly trimmed beard, and wore a suit that likely cost more than a mid-size sedan. His face looked hauntingly familiar. Do I know you? She asked, her voice trembling. Not yet, the man replied. But your husband will find it very interesting to see who you are dancing with. My name is Elias Calloway. The name didn't immediately ring a bell, but something in his absolute confidence demanded her attention. Trust me, he added. This dance will change everything for everyone in this room. She reached out and took his hand. They stepped onto the dance floor. Elias moved with a grace that was effortless and refined. You're a wonderful dancer, she remarked. My wife loved to dance a long time ago, he said softly. At that moment, Maya noticed Marcus stop in his tracks, nearly tripping over Chloe. His face turned an ashen gray, his composure crumbling instantly. Mr. Calloway. Marcus' voice was strained, barely a whisper. We weren't informed of your visit. I am not in the habit of giving warnings. Elias replied coldly. The music faded. Elias bowed slightly to Maya. Thank you for the dance. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in my office, both of you. But I don't work for the company, Mia said, confused. By tomorrow you'll understand why that doesn't matter. He walked away, the crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. Marcus grabbed Mia's elbow, his grip painfully tight. What did you do? He hissed. How do you know him? I don't. He just approached me. Who is he, Marcus? You've been married to the CFO of his company for 5 years, and you don't know who he is? And then it clicked. The portrait in the lobby of the corporate headquarters, the bronze plaque with the name of the founder, Elias Belleros Calloway. But he had retreated from public life years ago after a personal tragedy. Marcus didn't say another word. He stared at the exit, sweat beading on his forehead. Throughout the entire ride home he remained silent. Once they arrived, he immediately locked himself in his study. Maya could hear him making frantic, hushed phone calls. He wasn't just angry, he was terrified. She went to bed, but sleep was impossible. The image of Marcus's hand reaching for that girl replayed in her mind, the laughter of the crowd, her own hand hanging uselessly in the air. Growing up in the foster system had taught her not to expect gifts from life. But when Marcus had appeared, she had allowed herself to believe in a fairy tale. Her foster parents, kind and simple people, a high school physics teacher and a nurse, had died within a year of each other when she was 20. First, her father had a heart attack during a lecture. Then, her mother seemed to simply decide she couldn't live without him. Doctors called it cancer, but Maya knew the truth. She had been left alone with a tiny apartment and a scholarship to architecture school. She had worked nights, saved every penny, and lived on instant noodles. She had clawed her way out, graduating with honors. And then Marcus appeared, and life finally seemed to smile at her. Now she realized that smile was a predator's grin. The next morning they drove to the office in total silence. A cold December rain lashed against the windows of the town car. The Skyline Infrastructure building stood 12 stories tall in the heart of the business district. Maya paused in front of Elias's portrait in the lobby. In the photo he looked younger, his gaze piercing. The 12th floor was the executive suite. Long corridors with plush carpets, muted lighting and original paintings on the walls. As a designer, Maya noticed the details immediately. The scent of expensive leather and freshly roasted coffee. The secretary, an older woman with elegant pearl earrings, gave them a long, searching look before nodding. Mr. Calloway is expecting you. Please go in. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Antique furniture and shelves lined with leather-bound books filled the space. Elias sat behind a heavy mahogany desk, his expression stern. Sit down, he said. This will be a long conversation. Marcus sat on the edge of his chair, coiled like a spring. Mr. Calloway, I assume you've realized that after last night's misunderstanding. I want to apologize. I had a bit too much to drink. Last night has nothing to do with this. Elias interrupted, though it did reveal your true character. He pulled out a thick folder. Maya, what I am about to tell you will change your life forever. Maya's heart began to hammer against her ribs. 10 years ago I lost my family, Elias began. My wife and my daughter. It was a car accident. A truck veered into their lane on the interstate. I'm so sorry, Mia whispered. My daughter was pregnant. 8 months. The doctors managed to save the baby, a girl. Maya waited, not understanding why she was being told this. I was broken, Elias said, his voice cracking with a decade of pain. I couldn't look at that child. She reminded me too much of everything I had lost. I placed her in the system. I provided for her anonymously, but I never visited. The guilt was a cold weight in my soul. A chill crawled up Maya's spine. She was given a new name. 3 years later, she was adopted by a family of educators. She grew up never knowing who she was. Elias looked up. His eyes filled with a deep ancient ache. That girl is you, Maya. Silence crashed down on the room. No, Maya gasped. That's impossible. I was an orphan. My biological parents were unknown. Here are the documents, Elias said, sliding the folder toward her. The birth certificate, the DNA results. I took a sample from a glass you used at a charity event a year ago. Everything matches. Maya opened the folder with shaking hands. The birth certificate read Anna Calloway. The date matched her birthday exactly. Her mother's name was Sarah Calloway. There was a photograph of a young woman with a gentle smile and skin the color of deep mahogany. The same eyes Maya saw in the mirror every single morning. "This is a lie, a scam," Marcus shouted, jumping to his feet. "Sit down," Elias barked. "We aren't finished." He pulled out another stack of documents. "A year ago, I was diagnosed with a serious heart condition. I began putting my affairs in order. And that's when I discovered that my company was being bled dry." Marcus turned a sickly shade of pale. "Over the last 5 years, more than $200 million have been funneled out of Skyline infrastructure through shell companies and fictitious contracts," Elias said. I don't understand," Marcus stammered. "Oh, you understand perfectly." Elias threw printouts onto the desk. "Records of offshore accounts in the Caymans. Correspondence with your accomplice, the girl from the dance floor, properties in Montenegro." Maya looked at her husband. His face shifted from fear to anger and then to a cold, calculated mask. "And then there's this," Elias said, placing a final document in front of Maya. It was a sales agreement. Mia's signature was at the bottom, a signature she had never written. "Your husband structured the embezzlement so that the trail would lead directly to you. He forged your name. Without my intervention, you would have gone to prison for thefts you never committed." Maya turned to Marcus. "Is this true, Marcus?" He lifted his head, and in his eyes she saw nothing but a cold, calculating hatred. "And if it is, what are you going to do? Run to the grandfather you've known for 5 minutes?" "Marcus, shut up," Elias said firmly. "For 5 years I tolerated you." Marcus spat, looking at Maya. "I tolerated your boring little life. I played the role of the loving husband perfectly. I'm done." Elias pressed a button on his desk. "Security will escort you out. Your credentials have been revoked." 2 large men entered the room. Marcus straightened his jacket and smiled, the same smile Maya had once loved. "This isn't over. I have connections, friends in high places. You won't get rid of me that easily." He was let out. The heavy doors clicked shut. "Maya." Elias's voice softened. "Marcus is dangerous. He won't give up easily. Why did he do all of this? Money. But that's not the whole truth. I'll tell you the rest later." He pulled out an old photo album. "This is your mother, your grandmother. This is your history." Maya opened it. From the first page, a laughing woman surrounded by sunflowers looked back at her. The caption, "Read Sarah, age 20. Maya began to cry. For the first time in many years, the dam broke. She cried for the mother she never knew, the grandmother she didn't remember, the grandfather who had abandoned her and returned almost too late, and for the husband who had spent 5 years pretending to love her just to use her. She cried for the naive girl who believed in a fairy tale, only to be met with total betrayal. Elias didn't try to comfort her with empty words. He simply sat beside her in silence, understanding that no words could fix this. She needed time to gather the shattered pieces of her life. "What do I do now?" she asked finally. "Now you rest. I have a secure apartment where you'll be safe. You cannot go back to your house." She was placed in a car and driven through the city. The apartment was spacious, 3 rooms in a quiet high-end neighborhood. The fridge was stocked. The closet contained clothes in her exact size. "How did you know my size?" she asked Elias over the phone. "I've been watching over you for a year," he admitted, preparing for this conversation. He hung up, promising to call in the morning. Maya wandered through the strange apartment, touching unfamiliar objects. Outside the window, a heavy snow began to fall. Large flakes drifted slowly onto the dark branches of the trees. Who was she now? Maya Belleros, the designer and wife of a financier, or Anna Calloway, the granddaughter of a billionaire and eyes to a construction empire, or simply a woman whose entire world had collapsed in a single night? The photo album Elias gave her was on the kitchen table. She sat down and began to turn the pages, her mother in a graduation gown, her mother at the beach, tanned and happy, her mother pregnant, hands resting on her stomach. Under that photo was the caption, 8 months waiting for little Anna. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "You'll regret this. I know people who will destroy both you and your grandfather. This is only the beginning. Maya stared at the words for a long time. Then she turned off the phone and went to bed. Tomorrow she would think, she would decide, she would act. But tonight, she allowed herself the grace to simply be broken. Maya was woken by the doorbell at 6 o'clock in the morning. She threw on a robe and approached the door. Who is it? Miss Calloway. It's Jordan Hayes, head of security for Mr. Calloway. He asked me to deliver something urgent. She opened the door. A sturdy man in a black coat held a large cardboard box. Your things from the house. We retrieved what we could, but the place was ransacked. Someone got there before us. Maya took the box. Inside were her documents, a few photos, her laptop, and some makeup. Almost no clothes. What do you mean ransacked? The furniture was overturned. Things were thrown everywhere. They were looking for something, or they wanted to scare you. Marcus wasn't wasting any time. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Maya, a woman's voice said mockingly. It was Chloe. Marcus told me everything. You're so pathetic. For 5 years, he only put up with you for your grandfather's money. Why are you calling me? To warn you. We aren't backing down. Marcus earned that money. If you don't leave us alone, you'll be sorry. The line went dead. Maya opened a notebook and began to write. What did she know? Her husband married her for an inheritance. He had been stealing for 5 years. He forged her signature. He was threatening her. She looked at the list and realized her tears had dried up. The Maya who had stood on that dance floor with her hand in the air was dead. A new woman was being born, one who refused to be a victim. At 9 o'clock, Elias called. How are you? I'm okay. Chloe called me. She threatened me. We need to meet. I have more to tell you, Elias said. Things I didn't have time for yesterday. An hour later, she was back in his office. He looked exhausted. I have to tell you the whole truth, he said. The accident that killed your mother. It wasn't an accident. Maya felt her blood run cold. What are you talking about? For 10 years I believed. It was just a tragedy. A truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel. But a year ago, some strange details surfaced. He opened his laptop. This is a private investigator's report. The truck driver, a man named George Miller, received a payment of $100,000 a week before the crash. Shortly after he was released from prison, he died of a heart attack at age 38. He was murdered, Mia whispered. Witnesses are silenced when people are afraid they'll talk. Maya, do you know who might have ordered the hit on my family? Elias sighed. My partner and college friend, Paul Thorne. I trusted him like a brother. He died 5 years ago from cancer, but before he died, he tried to contact me. He called, he wrote, I never answered. Now, I think he wanted to confess. My investigator found proof. The money paid to Miller came from one of Thorne's offshore accounts. He wanted to take over the company. Not exactly, Elias continued. After the crash, I stepped away, but the company remained mine. Paul became the director, but not the owner. He thought I would sell my shares, but I just disappeared and he died without getting what he wanted. But Paul had a son, Maya whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Marcus. Marcus is Paul Thorne's son. He changed his last name after his father died. He was Marcus Thorne. Then he became Marcus Vance, then Marcus Belleros. Your husband is the son of the man who murdered your mother. And he continued his father's work, Ma said, her voice hollow. Paul couldn't steal the company, so Marcus decided to finish the job. He didn't marry me by accident. Every step was calculated. Maya remembered how they met. Marcus had walked into her studio, charming and attentive. He had asked about her work, admired her sketches. He invited her for coffee, then dinner. She had thought it was fate. It was a cold-blooded calculation. How did he find me? A woman named Martha Miller worked at the foster home. She was the truck driver's sister. Paul Thorne planted her there in case he ever needed information about the child. And Chloe Miller, George's daughter, the niece of the woman at the foster home. The daughter of the man who killed your mother is sleeping with the son of the man who ordered it. Maya walked to the window. What are you going to do? I want them to face justice, Elias said. The embezzlement is provable, but I need your help. You are the victim. Without your statement, we can't build the case. She looked at the grandfather who had once abandoned her. He had returned, found her, and was trying to protect her. It wasn't enough for full forgiveness yet, but it was enough to accept his help. "I'm ready," she said, "but I want to understand every detail." The next 3 days were spent in the office, buried in documents. Elias gave her a private office and an assistant, a sharp young lawyer named Andrew, who patiently explained the financial schemes. The picture that emerged was monstrous. Marcus had started siphoning money almost immediately after their wedding. Small amounts at first to test the systems, then larger sums. Shell companies, fake contracts for construction materials, inflated salaries for non-existent employees. Chloe, working in accounting, covered the tracks. Maya read the documents until her eyes burned. She wrote down names, dates, and amounts. She drew diagrams on large sheets of paper connecting companies and people. It was like her work as a designer, but instead of interiors, she was mapping a crime. "Here's your signature," Andrew said, pointing to a document. "A contract for $12 million worth of tile. The supplier is a shell company registered to a homeless man in another state. He doesn't even know he's a CEO." Maya stared at the signature. It looked like hers, but she had never signed it. "How do we prove it's a forgery?" "Handwriting experts." "But look at the date. March 15th, 2 years ago. Where were you?" "My foster mother's birthday. I go to the cemetery every year. I spend the whole day there. And then I visit her old neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She helps me tend the grave. Have an alibi. I couldn't have been in the city to sign that." Evidence continued to pile up. Maya built a timeline, cross-referencing dates and looking for witnesses. It was grueling work, but it gave her a purpose. As long as she was focused on the papers, she didn't have time to think about the heartbreak. On the 4th day, the nightmare took a new turn. An article appeared online. "Aries or Hustler? How a mystery woman manipulated the owner of Skyline Infrastructure." Maya couldn't believe her eyes. The article called her a con artist who had forged documents to secure an inheritance. It quoted anonymous sources within the company and featured a photo from the gala of her dancing with Elias. The headline screamed about million-dollar hunters. Then came a video. Chloe was on camera looking tearful in a modest sweater. "She destroyed our family. Marcus loved me. We were going to get married. And then this woman appeared and started spinning her web. She tricked a sick, lonely old man." Maya watched the screen, shaking not with fear but with pure rage. This girl, whose father had killed Mia's mother, dared to play the victim. The phone rang. "Marcus, did you see the surprise?" His voice was triumphant. "This is just the beginning, sweetheart. I have friends in the media, in the police, and in the district attorney's office. You thought you could just throw me out? You're a criminal, Marcus. You'll answer for everything." "Oh, she has claws now." He laughed. "Listen carefully. You have 1 week. Convince the old man to drop the charges. Have him pay me $50 million in a severance package, and we'll go our separate ways." "You must be joking. I'm as serious as death. If you don't pay, I'll destroy you both. I have files on Callaway old sins." Maya went to Elias's office. "He wants $50 million and he's threatening to release dirt on you." Elias was silent for a moment. "I know what he has. 30 years ago, when the company was starting, there were bribes, questionable deals. Everyone worked that way back then. Does he have proof?" "Paul kept journals, insurance, I suppose. He passed them to his son. The statute of limitations has passed, so I won't go to jail, but my reputation will be ruined. The stock will plummet. Employees will lose their jobs. Are you going to pay him?" A steely look came into Elias's eyes. "I never pay blackmailers. Never." "Then what?" "We strike first." Elias contacted his legal team and the authorities. The following days were a marathon. Statements to the police, depositions, forensic examinations. The handwriting experts confirmed the forgeries. The financial audit laid out the entire scheme. Marcus followed through on his threat. Compromising documents about Elias's early career were leaked, but the reaction wasn't what he expected. People shrugged. It was the 80s and 90s. The business world was a different beast back then. The stock dipped 3% and then bounced right back. However, the reports of the embezzlement hit like a bomb. Journalists whom Elias had invited to a press conference greedily detailed the CFO's schemes. The story of an orphan betrayed by her own husband sparked a wave of public sympathy. Online forums were buzzing. What a strong woman. I'm glad she fought back. Chloe tried to give another interview, but no one was listening anymore. The comments under her videos changed to con artist and fake victim. Public opinion is a strange thing. A week ago, people were ready to tear Maya apart. Now, the same people defended her with a fierce loyalty. 2 weeks after the gala, Maya stood by the window in her new office at Skyline Infrastructure. Elias had insisted she start working at the company, initially as a consultant for workspace design. You need to know the business you'll one day inherit, he had told her. She didn't argue. Outside, snow was falling. The city was wrapping itself in a winter shroud, preparing for the new year. It was strange. Only 2 weeks had passed, but it felt like an entire lifetime. Marcus and Chloe had been arrested 3 days ago. The charges were grand larceny, embezzlement, and forgery. They were facing up to 10 years in prison. Their lawyers tried to get them released on bail, but the judge was firm. The risk of flight was too high. Elias walked into the office and stood beside her. What are you thinking about your mother? I was so small when she never got to know me, Mia whispered. She loved you. She was so excited for you. She picked out your name, bought so many little clothes. He paused. I should have told you years ago. I failed you, Maya. I failed Sarah. I failed everyone. You came back. That's what matters. She turned to him. This man had caused her a lot of pain, even if indirectly. He had abandoned her and let her grow up alone. But he had also saved her from prison and given her the truth. Forgiveness was a long road, but she was ready to take the first step. Grandfather, tell me about her. What was she like? Elias smiled for the first time in days and began to tell her stories. About how little Sarah was afraid of the dark and slept with a nightlight until she was 10. How she dreamed of being a ballerina but grew too tall. How her laugh was so infectious that everyone around her started smiling. How she loved to bake cookies using an old family recipe. Maya listened, absorbing every word. These were the pieces of the mosaic that made up the woman she never knew, but who had given her life. Outside, it was getting dark. The city lights began to twinkle. Somewhere in a detention center sat the man who had pretended to be her husband for 5 years, and the woman who had helped him try to ruin her. But Maya wasn't thinking about them anymore. She was thinking about the future, about the company she was learning to run, about the grandfather she was learning to forgive, and about the new strong version of herself. The Maya who had walked into that gala 2 weeks ago no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had walked through betrayal and survived. A woman who would never let anyone use her again. Thank you, she said to Elias. I'm the one who should be thankful, he replied, for you giving me a second chance. They stood by the window, grandfather and granddaughter found after 30 years. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and it felt as though the world was starting over. But the story wasn't over yet. The trial was still ahead. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, bloggers, and the curious were all there to see the conclusion of the story that had dominated the headlines for 2 months. The Skyline Infrastructure case had become a symbol. Some saw it as a triumph of justice. Others saw it as a war of the elite. Maya sat in the front row next to Elias. Over those 2 months she had grown stronger. Her gaze was steady, her posture regal. Her colleagues no longer saw her as a guest. She was involved in every project, asking the right questions and offering real solutions. Her design background was unexpectedly useful. She saw details that others missed. Marcus was led into the room in handcuffs. 2 months in detention had changed him. The polished look was gone. His expensive suit had been replaced by a prison jumpsuit. He had a rough beard, but his eyes remained the same, cold and calculating. He found Mia's gaze and smirked. Chloe was led in after him. She looked terrified and lost. The confident girl who had danced with Maya's husband was nowhere to be found. All rise. The Honorable Judge Margaret Vance presiding. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s with silver hair, took her seat. Maya knew her reputation. Fair, unbribable, and tough. She was exactly what this case needed. The prosecutor read the charges. Grand larceny, fraud, and forgery. Marcus was facing up to 10 years, and Chloe up to 6 as an accomplice. Marcus' lawyer, a high-profile defender who only took big cases, tried to build a narrative of a corporate conspiracy. He claimed Marcus was a victim of Elias Callaway, who allegedly wanted to get rid of a successful CFO, and framed him using his suddenly discovered granddaughter. My client was set up. The lawyer proclaimed, all this so-called evidence is fabricated. Mr. Callaway used his influence to destroy a man who knew too much about his own past. Maya listened, her blood boiling, but she had learned to stay composed. Emotions were a poor advisor in a courtroom. When it was her turn to testify, she walked to the stand and took the oath. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The prosecutor began with simple questions. How long had she been married? Where did she work? How did she meet Marcus? Maya answered calmly and clearly. Were you aware of your husband's financial operations? No, he never discussed work with me. He said it was boring and I wouldn't be interested. Did you sign any contracts for Skyline Infrastructure? Never. I had no professional connection to the company. How do you explain your signature on these documents? Maya looked at the screen displaying the scans. Those signatures are forgeries. Forensic experts have confirmed this. Furthermore, several documents are dated when I was not physically in the city. For example, on March 15th, I was at my foster mother's grave. There is a witness. Marcus' lawyer stood up. Permission to cross-examine, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Miss Belleros. The lawyer said, approaching her. You claim you didn't know about your husband's activities, yet you lived on his income. You wore designer clothes. You drove an expensive car. It didn't surprise you that a CFO had such a lavish lifestyle. My husband received a high salary and significant bonuses. I saw nothing suspicious in our lifestyle. And when you found out you were Callaway's granddaughter, didn't that seem like a very convenient coincidence? I don't understand the question. I'm asking, the lawyer raised his voice. Is this entire story a performance? You and your grandfather decided to get rid of an inconvenient director and came up with a beautiful legend of a poor orphan and a villainous husband. Maya paused. She knew this was coming. I grew up in foster care, she said quietly but firmly. I was adopted by hard-working people who died when I was 20. I worked for my education and my career. When I married Marcus, I had no idea who my biological grandfather was, and I certainly didn't plan for my husband to publicly humiliate me at a gala, only for me to find out he's a thief and the son of the man who murdered my mother. The room fell into a dead silence. I have no further questions, the lawyer muttered, returning to his seat. Next came the handwriting expert, the financial analyst, and former employees who had seen Marcus and Chloe whispering in the halls, but the final blow was still to come. The prosecution calls Martha Miller, the prosecutor announced. A murmur went through the room. Maya squeezed Elias's hand. They weren't sure Martha would agree to testify. She entered the room looking thin and nervous, avoiding Marcus' eyes. State your name and former occupation. Martha Miller. I'm retired now. I used to work at the state foster facility. Are you acquainted with the defendant Marcus Thorne? Martha swallowed hard. Yes, I am. She spoke hesitantly, but the core of the story was clear. 20 years ago, Paul Thorne had approached her, asking her to keep an eye on a specific girl in the system. A girl who had been brought in under strange circumstances. Martha was paid to provide updates on her growth, her school, and her adoption. Why did Mr. Thorne want this information? I don't know for sure. He said it was for business, that the girl was his partner's granddaughter and that it might be useful one day. And did you pass this information to the defendant after his father's death? Yes. Marcus contacted me 5 years ago. He wanted to know where that girl was and how to find her. Marcus' lawyer jumped up. Objection. The witness is biased. There is no proof. There is proof, the prosecutor said calmly. We have the bank records, transfers from a company owned by Thorne to Martha Miller's account, and we have the text messages from Marcus Thorne's phone. The screen showed the messages. I need her address. Where does she work? Send me. Photo. Marcus turned pale. For the first time he looked truly terrified. But there was more. The prosecution calls Victor Sterling. An elderly man with a cane entered the room. Who are you, Mr. Sterling? I'm a driver, 40 years on the road. I'm retired now. 10 years ago, I witnessed a crash on the interstate. Tell us what you saw. Sterling cleared his throat. The truck was driving fine, staying in its lane. Then it suddenly veered sharply to the left. It wasn't like someone falling asleep. A sleeping driver drifts. This guy jerked the wheel like it was on purpose. Did you report this to the police? I tried, but they wouldn't listen. And then I was told to keep quiet. Who told you? People came to my house. They said if I kept talking, my family would pay for it. I was scared. I have grandkids. Why are you testifying now? Sterling looked at Maya. Because this woman deserves the truth. Her mother died and I stayed silent for 10 years. Enough is enough. The room was motionless. The prosecutor turned to the judge. Your Honor, the prosecution believes the evidence is overwhelming. We also ask the court to refer the materials regarding Paul Thorne's involvement in the death of Sarah Calloway to the appropriate authorities for further investigation. The judge nodded. The court will recess for 4 hours to deliberate. Maya sat in the hallway drinking cold coffee from a vending machine. Elias was beside her, focused and silent. Over these months they had become close, not like a fairy tale, but like two people who had survived a war and learned to trust. Whatever happens today, Elias said, I am proud of you. It's not over yet. I'm not talking about the court. I'm talking about you. Most people would have broken. You stood your ground. Maya looked at him. I didn't have a choice. There is always a choice. You could have run, hidden, or given up. You chose to fight. The doors opened. The verdict was ready. Everyone stood. The judge opened the folder. In the name of the people of the United States. The rest was a blur. Maya heard the words guilty, proven, sentencing. It was only when the judge said the final numbers that she truly woke up. Marcus Thorne sentenced to 8 years in state prison. Chloe Miller 4 years. Marcus snapped, shouting something incoherent as the bailiffs grabbed his arms. Chloe was sobbing into her hands. Maya looked at the man who had been her husband for 5 years. The man who had kissed her every morning and lied to her every night. She thought she would feel a sense of triumph or relief, but there was only a vast emptiness. Elias put his arm around her. Let's go. There's nothing left for us here. Outside, they were met by a swarm of journalists. Camera flashes shouted questions, microphones shoved in their faces. Maya, how do you feel? Miss Calloway, any comment? Maya stopped. She could have walked past them, but she wanted to speak. Today the court delivered justice, she said into the microphones. But for me, this isn't a victory. It's the end of a nightmare. I lost 5 years of my life to a man who used me as a tool. You can't get those years back. But I gained something else. The truth about myself and my family. That truth is painful, but it makes me stronger. Thank you. She got into the car. As they drove away, leaving the courthouse and the journalists behind, she felt the weight of the past finally lifting. A year passed. Maya stood by the window of her office, the same office Marcus once occupied. It was an irony she didn't overlook. She had taken his place. Not immediately, of course. She had studied, learned the ropes, and made her share of mistakes. Elias hadn't gone easy on her, and she was grateful for that. The company had changed. Maya brought a fresh perspective, not just in design but in humanity. She insisted on social programs for employees, transparent bonuses, and a corporate culture where people felt like individuals, not just gears in a machine. Elias was happy. His health had stabilized and the doctor spoke of remission. He still came to the office every day, but he was handing more and more over to his granddaughter. You're doing a better job than I did at your age, he told her often. Maya just smiled. She knew it wasn't entirely true, but she accepted the compliment. There was a knock on the door. Come in. A man in his 30s with sharp, observant eyes walked in. Jordan Hayes. After the trial, they had stayed in touch initially for security reasons than just because. Am I interrupting? No. Come in. He sat in the chair across from her. I closed your mother's file today. Maya froze. What? We found enough evidence. Paul Thorne ordered the hit. George Miller carried it out. Since they're both dead, there's no one left to prosecute. But the case is officially closed. Your mother and grandmother. They finally have justice. Maya turned back to the window. Tears blurred her vision for the first time in months. Thank you, Jordan. It was my job. No, it was more than that. You didn't have to dig that deep. Jordan stood up and walked over to her. I wanted to ask you something. Not as your head of security. She turned around. They were standing quite close. Asked. A new restaurant opened on the waterfront tonight. They say the view of the river is spectacular. Would you like to go? I would love to, she said before he could even finish. He smiled. She smiled back. Outside the sun was setting, bathing the city in a golden light. A new life, new people, a new her. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself and to find the people who actually deserve to be by your side. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch.